On tonight's program, we follow up on our Neverwinter discussion.
No, I don't think we're being taken advantage of.
We ask the question, are there better ways to access the Foundry in-game?
I'd like to see them to have some kind of support for chaining missions together.
And the monetization bug. Will it ever be fixed?
It's just something I want to bring. Something I want to bring up again, so that I make sure that, you know what, I hope someone out there hears it and thinks of it as, yeah, that's true.
Join us on the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is a man who lapped a Nürburgring in 10 minutes flat in a Fiat Panda, Greendragoon.
I don't even know what you just said.
Watch more Top Gear, jeez. And we have a man who floats like a butterfly and has to have regular medical treatments for that condition, Hippiejohn.
It's good medicine, at least. I have to say, it's good medicine, at least.
And with us tonight is founder author Paxfederatica, or who on in-game goes by NCC 89471. Welcome.
Thank you. And I'm glad you actually got my username right on the first try.
Well, I had to write it down.
Yeah.
And I want to begin tonight with a bit of a follow-up to last week's discussion about the Neverwinter Foundry. We had a lot of folks chime in on the forums, and I thought Pendra made a very good point. Pendra is not someone who, shall we say, goes to any lengths to conceal his displeasure. So I'll pose this. I'll pose this in a more diplomatic version. And the question is, are we, the Star Trek Online Foundry authors, essentially being taken advantage of, in that we're providing all this feedback, but another game is receiving all the benefits? So I'm going to put this to the guys here, and we'll see what you guys think.
Okay, if nobody else is going to pop in right away, I've got an opinion there. No, I don't think we're being taken advantage of. We are in a 3-year-old game that by this point, I mean, I've only been playing with the Foundry since this November or December. Just a few months here, whereas some of you have been playing with the Foundry for years. But even in just those few months playing with the Foundry, it's not hard for me to realize that in Star Trek Online, we are not the way, one, that the game makes money. We are one of the smallest niches of players who play the game. And I'm just, for one, I'm thankful that they support us and give us the tool. They could come out and, actively say, you know what, you guys are never going to get updates except for this little dribble of stuff. If they were honest about it and told me it up front, I'd be like, well, thanks for giving me the tool and I'll figure out how to use this tool. As it is, they give us updates sometimes. And that makes me happy because we're a really small percentage of the player base in Star Trek Online, the people who create in the Foundry and, actually play in the Foundry the way that it's meant to be. Because, I'm not counting people who come into the Foundry and play nothing but exploits and grinder missions and things like that. I'm sure that number would be greater. But I don't think we're being taken advantage of because we're a game that was created, the game was created or launched 3+ years ago, and the Foundry's been around for 2 years, or slightly more, I think. And Neverwinter is brand new. Neverwinter is the thing that is going to keep making the company money right now. I mean, not to say that Legacy of Romulus isn't going to, bring more money in with STO. And I know that STO right now is one of their top, one of Perfect World's top performers or whatever. But Neverwinter's gotten good reviews. People are spending money on it, and the Foundry is an integral part of the way that they do things there. And it's an integral part.
Much more so than it is in STO.
Much more so than it is in STO. And because it's such an integral part of the way that they do things there, I am not sad that the company is taking our feedback about how to make this tool that they created better and actually making the tool better as they go forward and putting it into new games that they're creating and stuff. Because we do still get some attention in STO. Not right now. Right now they're all working on Legacy of Romulus, and afterwards I hope all of the developers, except for the people who just need to keep the servers running for us, I hope they all take a much deserved 2-week vacation, once this thing launches and they get it taken care of, and all of the bugs are worked out.
Well, yeah, the QA team is probably going to have to be even more overtime.
More overtime, after it launches. But really, I mean, come on. Neverwinter is a brand new game that since the very first Neverwinter gold box game back in 1981 or 83 or 80, I don't know, it might have been 86 even. But regardless, that gold box game had player-created content possibilities in it. It's kind of one of the cores of what Neverwinter does. And so if they're taking our feedback about, hey, this tool would be better if you could do this thing, and they're adding it to their base code of their tool, so that, yeah, I'm happy with them doing it. I don't feel like we're being taken advantage of. Not at all. I think, I read that post, I read that thread, and I was like, wow. There's just a lot of anger here. There's not a lot of, I myself respond to things very often out of just rawr, I'm angry about this. But when I think about it, I mean, come on. We want Cryptic to succeed, because if Cryptic succeeds, they keep making the games that we're enjoying playing. To me, that's the bottom line. I can't be angry
the longer this game is around, the more chance we have of getting some of those features ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And heck, the way I see it, they're using Neverwinter basically as a guinea pig for us.
I hope so. we have had a few features migrate back over. The disappearing NPCs, patrols.
Yeah.
Those are things that we were specifically told when these were added. It's we've been working on these for Neverwinter, and you get them.
Yeah,
so, I want to kind of...
Well, if bugs come up, they'll come up first in Neverwinter, and hopefully that means that they'll have things worked out a little bit better by the time it gets around to Stowe.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
So, I want to follow up on what Hippiejohn said, and I will fully admit that there was a certain amount of disappointment when I first got into the Neverwinter Foundry, and I think a little bit of that translated in last week's episode. But I think there are also a few misconceptions that need to be cleared up. First off, the Foundry is by no means the forgotten child of Stowe. In fact, I have a feeling that a fair chunk of the dev team look on the Foundry actually rather highly. Now, that said, I mean, for the most part, and especially lately, the Foundry is not the Stowe dev team's primary concern. Their primary concern has been to try and get content back coming out. Because, I mean, if you think about it, before New Romulus came out, we had, one featured episode series back in, March of last year?
Something like
that. And before that, there was a massive gap where...
the content drought.
Yeah, where basically during the whole sale of Cryptic. So this expansion is basically Cryptic's big chance to get back into pushing out major content, which is, in all honesty, needs to be their top priority. Now, second of all, I want to dispel the idea that the Foundry provides no value to Cryptic, and I don't believe that's true. I don't believe the devs believe that's true. The Foundry does provide value to the game as secondary content. And the devs know this.
It's sort of indirect.
It is.
It makes the game as a whole better.
It's an indirect value.
Even if it doesn't by itself bring in cash.
Money.
Yeah. It adds ancillary value to the game. Which makes it, and I think Dan has even been on record of saying this, is something very challenging to explain to his higher ups. But nevertheless, it does bring an ancillary value to the game, which in turn keeps people playing and in turn brings money back into the coffers of Cryptic. Thirdly,
I'm a great example. I was ready to turn the game off. Now I'm, almost ready to buy a lifetime subscription. It's just, saving money.
So thirdly, I mean, and this is kind of a truth of the matter. I mean, if you remember back when all of this new, Legacy of Romulus stuff was announced, the the Klingons were kind of bummed that they were not getting their own push. And the truth of the matter is that the Klingons, they are. I mean, Cryptic is definitely using this Legacy of Romulus to push back content for the Klingons. But they are not the focus of it because they are an existing faction. It is much harder to market an existing product that's been improved over a new product. So right now, as Hippiejohn said, Neverwinter is the new thing. And so it is getting primary development. It's just the way it is. It's the way, as a business, they have to work. I mean, you gotta think of the mind of the average consumer, think of how they have
new stuff instead of revamped old stuff.
Now, if you're smart, you take those advantages and push it back into your existing products. Cryptic seems to be very much a proponent of the idea of develop once and then distribute. You'll see many times where they will try and develop a new piece of tech on one game and then push it to other games. And the Foundry is no exception. A lot of times over in Champions Online, there will be people asking, when do we get the Foundry? And the answer
I think that'd be an excellent game for the Foundry.
Yeah, but the answer is, they would be foolish to try and push the Foundry to Champions before they have a good completed version. And up until Neverwinter's, and even probably still a little bit on Neverwinter yet, the Foundry has been very much a tool in development. So nothing that they would have pushed would have been in a prime completed state.
Yeah, I mean, we were specifically the beta test.
Yeah. And
we were told
and still are.
Yeah, and then the devs have even said before in the past that the success of the Foundry and Stowe is what pushed them to develop the Foundry for Neverwinter. And in fact, before Perfect World came along and said, hey, no, you really need to have real content, they were planning to make the Foundry the central primary source of content for Neverwinter.
That would have been terrible.
Yeah, that would have been terrible.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good way to do it, but.
Yeah, no, I'm glad Perfect World stepped in and said, hey, this isn't going to work. But it shows that Cryptic does realize the value of the Foundry. One last thing I'm going to say is there is one big difference between Neverwinter and Stowe when it comes to the Foundry, and that is that Stowe's Foundry is active. It is a lot easier to develop a product that isn't in active use versus a product that is, we're up to tens of thousands. I don't know if we're up to hundreds of thousands of missions yet. And every time they try to push
I can't
a
remember
new
what
update,
the number was. They have said before, but I can't.
I think it's between 50 and 100,000. But every time they push a new update, it breaks the Foundry. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have to do this whole song and dance every time. I mean, it's difficult to develop for us.
I heartily suggest that one of the reasons that we have not seen a major Foundry update that includes some of this new stuff that they've been developing. One, of course, they haven't had the time to do it, but I also think that adding all of that new tech, I mean, like last week we said it looks like the same tool with a different coat of paint. You know, it looks like, you know, at its core, there's a lot of stuff. Pretty much it is. But there's like, honestly, a 3D preview mode, they've told us that's not possible. They've out and out said we can't do that in Stowe. Maybe we can't do that in STO.
Well,
maybe
as somebody once told me,
do it would be update the whole Foundry. And that would mean making, like they just did on Tribble, everything you've ever done on Tribble is gone. Like, I remember when I first signed up for Tribble, they gave me like 20,000 free Zen points, and I spent most of them. Everything I bought, it's like I never bought it. Any characters I had, they were all wiped, you know, like, and I suspect that in order to update the Foundry to the level that we want it updated to incorporate some of those new things, it's like you just said, it's easier to push the new thing out that has all of these new bells and whistles than it is to update the old thing, because possibly to update the old thing would mean invalidating all of the missions that are already in existence, and that would just be,
that would be unfortunate. I mean, and there was somebody in that big thread, which was essentially, why are you wiping my character thread, down in the, Tribble forums that said, you know, nobody's gonna complain if they wipe the Foundry missions in the live. And I thought to myself, facepalm, there would be huge amounts of complaints if we have put hundreds and hundreds of hours into these missions.
And I suspect that in order to get such a major update to the Foundry would require something like that, and that's why they're trying to figure out, we've got to figure out a way to do it without doing
that. I mean, best case scenario, you would have it where it would just unpublish everything and you would have to manually republish and fix all the inconsistencies it would create in your mission.
Yeah.
I mean, rather than a wipe. That would be the sort of the best case scenario.
It could be possible that the piecemeal method we've been seeing is actually an attempt to very slowly port the Neverwinter Foundry over just so they don't break everything at once.
Do it one thing at a time, and so people can start.
Okay, this little bit of code, put it in. It didn't horribly destroy everything. Okay, next piece of code. Oh, that caused some problems. We got to fix it, retweak it.
And of course, they all have caused problems. Each one of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Every one of them bringing it in is in some way
right
broken.
So one last thing I want to touch, something you said, Drogan, is about them stating that the 3D editor was impossible. Funny enough, back when there was a forum post that one of the devs, and I can't remember who, basically sat down and explained to us why a 3D editor wasn't feasible. And it basically came down to rendering modes. That there were basically 3 types of rendering modes that occurred in the game. And I'm trying to recite all this off memory, but one mode was basically what we consider live. All the specific assets get loaded in for real-time playback, and we have that. But the downside of that is the more assets you try to load in, the more the memory gets out of control, and you can't have everything in. The other mode is what the devs use, and is both extremely memory intensive and really buggy. I think the dev pretty much admitted that they deal with crashes on their own tools. And I think there was a third mode that was really good about loading in new assets, but couldn't do very many assets at once. So in a sense, what the Neverwinter 3D editor does is it kind of skirts this issue by trying to do the 3D editing in the live rendering mode, where, and it gets around this by basically it doesn't load in new assets. It can't do that.
Yeah, it
can only tweak what's already there. So in a sense, this 3D editor is literally a workaround of the explanation they gave us as to why we couldn't have a 3D editor. And for the sake of that post, I mean, this was, a year or two ago? It basically...
I think that this comes up every so often because everybody wants it, so...
But at the time they were talking about basically having a 3D version of the 2D editor that we currently have. And as far as I know, that is still not possible. I mean, our poor little consumer computers just couldn't handle a tool like that.
Couldn't do it, yeah.
Well, I was told once, and it was sort of a joke, but only sort of, that when a computer programmer tells you something is impossible, that's just code for don't bother me with that right now.
It is.
And I think to some extent that's true because there are 2 things that I know of that they have told us are impossible that they've put in. One is logging out to character select instead of completely logging out. I remember them telling me that was impossible. And the other one was disappearing NPCs.
Well, the character login was impossible because they would require changes to the login server, which they ended up making.
Yeah.
It's
essentially nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible, but it either comes down to too much time or...
Things are only impossible until they're not, is the quote you're looking for.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hard.
All right. Well, let's move on to what we've been working on. And as our guest, Pax, why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, I got 2 things actually to talk about. First, as far as actually being logged into the Foundry itself, I've been regularly revisiting and tweaking my Ghost of War series. In particular, the climactic battle royale sequence at the end of part 6, which I've been getting a lot of feedback and complaints about, that has been a particularly tricky one to get right. But I think I finally managed to do that. That's one of the more complex set pieces that I've ever done.
What sort of complaints?
Basically that it's too hard to complete as far as defeating the last 2 mobs and getting out. So one change that someone suggested that seems to have worked out finally well, just adding another respawn point in between the 2 generators. Because before I was just having you respawn back at the original spawn point and then having to basically fight your way past the two guys again. And instead, by respawning between the two generators, you have a quicker path out. So you can usually kind of sneak past those last mobs instead of having to literally fight your way past them. And the other thing, the main thing I've been working on lately is I've begun starting writing a mission outline, and I'm about 40% of the way through it for part 1 of my Romulan prequel trilogy. It's a prequel to the Ghost of War series. I've tentatively titled the series Valley of the Shadow, and it'll feature a lot of the same characters and locales that have been seen in Ghost of War parts 1 through 3, and it'll also feature the same MacGuffin, the Thaleron satellite weapon system that was stolen and used by the villains in that series. But in Valley of the Shadow, we're going to see this weapon system used, or at least threatened to be used, the way it was originally intended. In part 2 of Ghost of War, I said that I had revealed that this Thaleron weapon system had been originally intended as basically a terror weapon to be used by the Romulans against their own people. And once the Legacy of Romulus came out, once that backstory came out, I should say, it occurred to me how well that dovetails in with my own Ghosts of War backstory. So I figured that would be the basis of my prequel trilogy. And as I said during our pre-recording little rap session, I'm probably going to do my first ever attempt at a fully custom interior map as part of this series. And that's probably going to take longer than anything to develop.
It's a big step. It's like graduation day. Now, these prequel missions, are you going to do them geared towards Romulan players, or are they just going to Romulan antagonists?
It's going to be a Romulan player mission. My trilogy is going to be designed for Federation allied Romulan players, though I may do a Klingon version sometime in the future.
Well, they tell us eventually that we'll be able to make missions for that all Romulan players will be able to see.
Oh, okay.
So I guess hopefully at some point you'll be able to sort of convert that.
Yeah. At first, though, it'll be just for the Federation side.
Yeah, I think
Federation allies, I should say.
Well, sounds good. Hippie, what have you been working on?
Sorry, I had myself on mute and I was sitting here taking notes about stuff I want to talk about later. What have I been working on? Recently, I found, I've told people that I've been working, I have this 4-part series that I know the exact moment that it ends, and I hopefully the impact is great. And I've taken the time, for some reason this series is important to me, and I've taken the time, write out all of the dialogue, and in some cases just some of the things that are happening. I've taken the time to really plan out how this is going to be before I put it all into the editor. And this week I've been the first mission has almost all of the dialogue in it at this point, and I've been putting a lot of dialogue into the story, and I realized that even though I thought I was done, that once I got into the editor and I was choosing the emotive face of the NPC that they're talking to, or just seeing the face of the NPC that they're talking to, or testing a map and walking through the missions to see the dialogue and check myself for spelling and all of that. That the characters take on a life of their own that they didn't have on a piece of paper when I wasn't looking at them. And I'm adding new bits of dialogue and in some cases whole new things that are going to be happening because characters are actually occurring to me. So the experience of trying to translate something that I had written out of the editor into the editor and having the editor become a catalyst for new parts of the story has been very cool. That's really what I've been working on. Like I said, almost the entire first mission now has the dialogue in it. So I've been having fun with the personalities of NPCs that exist on cryptic maps. If I I had to say, if I see people post teases and like images and stuff like that from their series, and in this case, all I can say is having put the dialogue in there, realizing that at some point you're going to look at Admiral Quinn and say, medical supplies, missing medical supplies. You called me away from the war front for medical supplies. That's, that, or something along those lines. I
love
haven't
it.
quite finished it. Like, really, that, like, you get summoned back to Earth, that's your tease. You get summoned back to Earth space dock because of missing medical supplies. You're called away from all of your other missions, specifically by Admiral Quinn, for missing medical supplies. And, there's your tease for that. But having been playing with that dialogue has been really fun. A lot of new things have occurred. I also started kind of drafting out the basics of, what's going to be a done-in-one Romulan story that, the story really, it wasn't one of those where the last scene occurred to me. Just listening to a song, title occurred to me, and I was like, wow, this title really kind of strikes me as a good title for a Romulan mission, and I just let that simmer for a while and finally came up with a mission, and so I've started doing the story breakdown and deciding whether or not I want to make it for Fed Allied Romulans or KDF Allied Romulans, and the title of it is going to be The Romance of Sadness. So beyond that, that's what I've been working on. That's it.
That same thing kind of happened to me a while back, as I was listening to a song and I was like, it just inspired me to make a Foundry mission, and I think I completely stopped making the one I had been working on and started and finished this new one just in about, 3 weeks. So, I mean, there's
we're not the only
nothing
ones
like inspiration.
We're not the only ones to do that, of course. There was, of course, Raktajino in a jar. Even though that analogy is somewhat off, Raktajino is Klingon coffee, not whiskey.
But still, yeah.
It was the more recognizable thing.
Czech flu, which is Klingon whiskey that was seen in
Czech flu in a jar.
Yeah. That's what Worf was drinking in front of, or not really drinking, but he introduced that Irish dude to it and up the long ladder.
Mm-hmm.
See, I have not watched that one in a long, long time. All right, Greendragoon, what have you been working on?
Well, what am I always working on?
I was going to say, wait, before you get started, how is part 2 coming?
Yeah, when's part 2 going to be out?
Hopefully at the same time I said before, but it's tough keeping up. I finally got that one conversation rewritten. It's in. It might get rewritten later, but for the moment it's in and it makes mostly sense. I got map 5 finally done, and I'm now working on map 6, designing a runabout impulse engine that you need to take apart.
And you're being very technical about this, aren't you?
Oh yeah. Well, I've got the DS9 technical manual, which has all of these very wonderful pictures of all of these runabout parts. And I made the mistake in part 1 of saying what was wrong with the runabout. And now you need to fix it, which means you have to do all of these specific things. And I've got illustrations showing me what these things look like. So now I gotta build them in the Foundry using the parts that I have.
Oh, that's awesome.
Set a nice little challenge for yourself there.
Yeah. Well, Horde eggs are becoming fusion reactors. I think I just found a use for the mess hall bowl, which happens to be a perfect size to hold a fusion reactor Horde egg.
Awesome. Very awesome.
Scrambled fusion reactor.
Oh yeah. Has so many uses.
Well, I haven't done much work in the Foundry, but I've been doing some more writing on my upcoming mission, which has a title. I'm calling it Sympathy for the Devil. This is going to be the one about Major Recall. Because I'm going to make her a somewhat sympathetic figure. I'm not going to make her a straight villain. She's got her own agenda. She pursues it ruthlessly, but it's not necessarily an evil agenda. And I've been working on her backstory, and I think I found an interesting way to put it. Because I've been writing it in log entries. And you are going to discover these log entries as you go through her lair. which is a crashed space station, a TOS space station that crashed on a planet, is decently intact. And you will be going through this space station, at the various levels of the space station, and you'll be able to interact with consoles, and you'll discover these log entries in reverse order. So the most recent will be the first thing you encounter, and then you'll keep going, and it'll reveal more of who she is and why she's doing all this.
You just talked about my favorite type of storytelling.
Which is
the playing around. But in this case, what you just said, completely reversing and revealing the story in reverse. Like I love the story where you know the final outcome and you learn how the final outcome occurred. Like you learn, or you meet this person and find out everything about who they are, and you're like, holy crap, this is who that person is. And then the next whole bunch of storytelling is how they got to be who they are. And the stuff that led up to it, and that kind of playing around with time in order to tell a story, I love it. Whether it's in like journal entries or flashbacks or whatever, that's some of my favorite kind of ways to reveal character and like mystery and things like that. So I can't wait to read what you write.
It's been interesting. Writing this, because I'm writing it in regular chronological order, and it's going to be told you're going to encounter it in reverse chronological order. So
yeah, you need to kind of put in certain allusions that'll get referenced backwards.
What I'll probably have to do is sort of write it all out and then go back through it and make sure that, exactly like you said, there's common threads throughout, and make sure that it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a big plot twist, but I think, as I'm envisioning it now, you will know it before you get to these. But I'm not sure about that. We'll see. There's still a lot up in the air about this mission. I have generally the beginning and the end, but I don't have a lot in the middle yet. We shall see. I do have some built. I've shown you a screenshot, Dragoon, of my crashed space station. Which taken a lot of inspiration from your crashed starship, I might add. Because
you have a whole bunch of new TOS elements to work with now.
Yes, and those are absolutely fantastic for working on these.
I love them.
and big thanks to the guys in that thread that I created. I can't remember. I think it might have been Star Destroyer 001 who came up with the back side of the bar to use for walls.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Try
backside of cells too.
Mm-hmm. Backside of cells works
Link
well
cells.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. Because it might be good to have some variety in my walls. Because you just have the same wall all the time; it gets a little boring. But the really cool thing about this space station is going to be half flooded, which I think I've told you guys about before. I've taken that meadow clearing map, which has some water on it, and part of this is going to be sunk down into that water.
Yeah,
which I think would make it very cool.
Yeah, I bet you could slowly lower the height of your building blocks, and so that just enough that the player doesn't really notice that they're actually descending, but that slowly the water keeps getting deeper.
That would be cool, except it doesn't quite get deep enough on that map to make it seem like it's going to fill up entirely, and there's a sense of danger, I think.
Well, there's a question.
There might be another map that can.
I was going to say, if it doesn't get deep enough on that map, there's a question. Does anyone know what map that the water does get deep enough that
it goes over the player's head?
I don't know if it goes over the player's head anywhere, but it gets pretty high. I mean, especially on the Ryza map.
Might be Ryza, yeah.
I was going to say Ryza.
The further you get out from the shore. I'll have to check that out. Because as it stands now, I could probably just select it all, copy and paste onto the other map.
After people listen to the show, if you happen to know which map out there has
please put
really
that in there for
water,
me.
Put them in the thread.
Because how cool would that be to have it slowly sinking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that you could, for story purposes, that you could ever have it fully come over your character's head, because it basically means that the character's drowning.
Yeah, and of course it wouldn't kill you, because it can.
But you could do it where it looks like certain sections of the
wonder how
the halls are like running down, except that it's just water, so it looks like it's running into the water.
I wonder about that water, in the map with the Barge of the Dead.
That might work.
Would have to check that out.
That might be really deep.
Did I mention that Neverwinter has placeable water objects?
Shut up.
Alright, so I have to admit, another thing that I've been doing, like, I stuck to STO. The other thing I've been doing this week is I've been creating things in the Neverwinter Foundry because my gaming group, my weekly tabletop gaming group decided that we're all going to download Neverwinter, and as the DM, I'm going, because we're losing 2 of our gaming group, by the end of the year. A couple of people one guy graduating from graduate school, and he has a job offer in Texas. He's going to become like super scientist guy. So we're basically losing 2 people, and we're going to use Neverwinter, because I know how to use a Foundry. I'm going to create a campaign on Neverwinter specifically for our group, which is going to be the other thing I've been doing.
I like that.
So I've been really enjoying Neverwinter. Oh, and the problem that I talked about last week isn't really a problem. The not being able to start from scratch with an NPC creation, because in every race possible, there's like 10 generic human 01, human, through human 10, or in some cases it's all the way up to like 15.
Yeah, it's workaroundable.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, that's a word now for us.
Workaroundable.
It doesn't offer
we've coined a new word that only works for the Foundry authors.
It doesn't offer the customization of the alien generator does for Stowe, but
no.
But since Neverwinter never calls for as wild of races as Stowe does, it's passable.
I have made some very, very interesting looking things there. Applying various monster stances to different races makes for some very awesome, interesting characters. So.
Well, let's move on to mission reviews. Hippie, why don't you start us off?
Last week we had one of our listeners, Lincolninspace, said on our thread on the forums when you announce, hey, there's a new episode. He said, hey, my mission, that he's had the banner for his, mission coming in the spring. He's had that up for a while, months on the forums, and he said, when he responded to the last show, he was like, hey guys, my mission is finally up. I'd love to hear your feedback. What do you have to say? And I had time, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I was like, okay, I have time to really, give this thing, in-depth, the kind of, I sit down and take notes about every map kind of review. Now, I don't want to go into that much in-depth, of a review. That would take, an hour. But, I know the guy listens to this show. Drop me a friend request in game at Hippiejohn, Hippiejohn, and run through the mission with me so I can point some of these things out to you. Cause some of it, a lot of the notes that I ended up taking are little things that happen, that could be fixed. And in some cases I'll talk about, that something that feels like a little thing that actually, that actually in the mission occurs as a big thing. And, I guess the first thing that I would say about the mission is that, once I said, all right, suspend my disbelief here and make, accept this as the way that this story is being told, I had a really good time. It's a fun mission. It's a cool story. It's got a very, what do I want to say here? Hero type of feel to it. You very much feel like a captain that, by the end of the mission, if you've given up some of the stuff I'm going to talk about here, you feel like by the end of the mission, I felt like I had been a hero that just save the day that my crew would be happy to serve with for the rest of their days. It was really fun in that respect. That aside, there were some things that I had to just kind of let go. The first of the, and some of it is stuff that we've talked about on the show, so that's one of the reasons I'm going to reference it here, is, one of those is both bridge officer and captain dialogue. That is very difficult. And I realized it was going to be difficult for me right from the mission giver dialogue. Because the mission giver, awesomely, is one of my bridge officers giving me a report about this thing that's happening and this thing I'm going to have to do. And it's actually what it is. It's her, or in my case it was a her. I think it would end up being whoever your, shipside science officer is. What it ended up being is it's her personal log about the reason that the captain, it gives a background for where the story is coming from and what happened in the moments before, or the weeks before the story began. The problem is that, like, in this case, in my case, the officer could very easily have talked like that. It just wasn't the way that I would imagine her talking. Had it been my Borg science officer that I got from the Kittimer Accord, I would have been like, what is going on? So it was that case where sometimes the bridge officer dialogue, or the dialogue that was put in my mouth as the captain, was immersion breaking, in that it was one of those, my officers would never talk like that, or I would never make this decision with this particular tune. I have another tune that might very well make the decision that I'm kind of being, it's a term in gaming, because I'm, a tabletop gamer and often end up running some of those games. One thing I try to avoid doing is railroading, is what they call it. And I kind of felt at a lot of points in this mission that I didn't have a choice, and part of that is, I think, that the way we have to create things in the storyboard, there really is no way to give people a choice, except for, the couple of missions we've talked about where you can give people the choice to fail, where they end up in a recursive loop of conversation or in a place they can't get out of or something like that. In this case, what it was is, knowing that we don't have that choice, there's just no illusion that we have that choice here in the way that things move forward. Saying that, there's a lot of custom work in this that is really, really nice. But, you know what? Let me stick to story for a second. The whole thing is one of those, like I said, heroic captain stories, because you're rescuing and this is evident from the mission giver dialogue and the whole, and the journal dialogue as well. So it's not really spoiling anything of the mission, is that you're going to rescue some of your crew who were lost. It says in the journal dialogue, a time to disobey orders. Your orders are to go do something else. You get orders very early in the mission that you have this other thing to do, and you basically have one of those, heroic, like, movie moments of, to hell with our orders, and, go save your crew instead. Which was one of those moments where I was like, wait a minute. While I have a tune that would be like, that would say, hey, screw our orders, let's go save our crew, the tune I was playing it with would have been like, we have our orders, and gone and done that other thing, and there was no workaround for that. And that was one of those, once I accepted this is the way the story was going to be told, I had a really good time with it. Also things, there are a couple of other things about the story that I had to not overlook, but that I had to make an allowance for. And the first of those is one of your first contacts in the mission. There's a fun little there's a fun little bit of dialogue that I don't want to talk too much about, but he's established very quickly. He calls you an old friend. And seeing as I've never met this character before, he's never, this is Lincolninspace's first mission. I've never met this particular character before. I don't remember meeting him in the STO storyline, if he's in there somewhere. Hence him in a very familiar way, referring to me as an old friend, really felt wrong right out of the gate. And like I said, I don't want to spoil the fun little dialogue thing that happens with him, but if he's your old friend, he should be shocked that you don't know something about him. That's all that I'll say there. If you're really an old friend with someone, you would know these kind of things. Basically, I feel that all of this core of what drives the story forward, your missing officers and this old friend of yours, that all needs tightening up story-wise, and somehow I need to connect with all of the core driving force of the story more. I mean, I did. Like I said, I had a good time with it. It was a very fun mission, but that in a story sense, I guess, is what I was missing. I felt all of the action forward and all of the feeling like a hero throughout the play of the mission. It was the impetus and the driving force that was propelling me forward into the mission that felt a little bit incomplete. Now, as I said before, it was really fun. It was very heroic, and the ending is actually really super. Some of the, not the actual ending that I got to, because what happened for me was that there's a break on map number 9, which to me it felt like I was going into the last map, and I kind of feel like I know what was going to happen on that map. And so up to that point, all of the driving action and everything was really super. There are, like I said, there are little things, however, technically that draw me out of the story, and that is where I would talk about map design. There's a lot of custom work here that is really stupendous. It's actually, I mean, for a first-time author to have gotten this, what's the word I'm looking for here? He goes for it with some of these maps, and at first you don't notice that he's going to go for it with the maps, because at first it's a little bit, and throughout there's a little bit of just repressing of old maps, and you sit back and I sat back and went, okay, this particular redressing of this map, there wasn't a lot done here, but there was a lot done here. And then he hits you with some really, really cool custom work. A spaceport, a city map that is really cool, something that, because I don't know whether it's just a limitation of, our states and things like that, I don't know what it is, but there's the way the story is told made me feel like I was leaping to safety I was leaping without a net off of, it's brilliant. The way it's done is really fun. And some of the custom work, I applaud. I just cannot applaud enough, because there was some real fun chances taken, and I'd like to, what I said before, man, friend me in game so that we can run through some of these maps together, and I can point out things that as I was running through it were a little bit immersion breaking, or made me go, oh, you need to change the state on that as soon as you change the state on this, and this whole map would improve. And I'm saying that due to a space map where he does the warping stars trick, which is one of my favorite things. It makes me not have to switch maps yet again. However, I warp into this transwarp gate, and then the stars warp around me, and I have to, fly forward to a waypoint and reach the next area. The issue is that the stars warp in around me, but the transwarp gate and all of the stuff that I'm leaving behind me, if I turn around, it's still there. That needs to be taken, like, that needs to disappear when you warp into the warp field. And that's just a simple change its state when the reach marker is achieved.
You have to make
things
sure
like
to
that.
do that with custom objects, though. You can't despawn things that are baked into the map.
Yeah, you can't. So you have to
Hopefully those are custom objects.
Right. Hopefully, yeah. I think they all look like detail objects that were placed in the map. That's what I'm talking about. Where I wanna run through these maps with you and be like, you can set the state on these things, and and point out where I saw things like that happen. And also there's one point where there's a choice of a reskinned NPC. I think it's a reskinned NPC, and I'm not sure why it's reskinned, or maybe there's supposed to be Hippiejohn there. I don't know, but they came out of nowhere. Like there's no indication to me beforehand that there are going to be Hippiejohn there, and all of a sudden, what I think are going to be Cardassians are setting up, and sometimes it's a Cardassian ensign who won't go down no matter how hard my best officers are hitting him with everything they have, and he's setting up Hippiejohn holo projectors. It's a captain mob, reskinned as a Cardassian ensign, and I don't know why that was happening. That could be a bug or something that's occurring.
Wonder if he was trying to lower keep the level limit lower?
That might be because Hippiejohn
are 16 plus.
16 plus rather than a 35 plus in
Yeah.
Cardassian. So I can understand that that's, if that's the reason, but maybe don't use the Hippiejohn, the issue was that the Hippiejohn captain mobs and the higher level Hippiejohn mobs have that, that thing where they spawn more mobs of Hippiejohn. So all of a sudden you're fighting Cardassians and they're building that Hippiejohn holo projector, and now I'm fighting Cardassians and a couple of Hippiejohn captains because Cardassians.
I think probably Romulans would be better stand-ins. To reskin his Cardassians.
To reskin something like that. There are a couple of places on the maps, like I said, and it's all things, please friend me in game, or, in some way I will get this list of little things, like a floating object here and there and things like that worked, that had their own, that I could go on for, like I said, almost 8 pages here of notes of things. One of the big ones is that it occurred so frequently throughout the mission. I do want to touch on it so that you can, if you're listening, Lincoln, if you want to, you can go back and possibly address this. And it happened to me too recently. Is that when they made the change that there was a patch recently that made a change that enemy groups and detail objects and things that you're going to interact with and NPCs that are patrolling around the map, et cetera, all have these ridiculous names. Like each individual actor may be known as Commander Tactical Officer 01, Cardassian Ensign 05, there's console wall large, things. These things were all over the maps, and I'm the kind of guy that clicks on everything. Now, if I weren't the kind of guy that clicked on everything, no big deal. I just like to click on everything that's clickable to see if I can do something with it. And there are a lot of instances throughout. Some places, an obvious rename happened, and other places, an entire security squad has, security officer 01, security officer 03, things like that. All, and that happened completely throughout the maps. And it's a little thing that I don't know how many other people besides someone like me who clicks on everything will notice, but I noticed it and I figured I'd tell you. As far as the story and whether I would want to play it, I want the, like I said, I have a tune who would completely make all of the choices that are made in this mission. And I want that, I want to be able to get past map number 9 so I can just finish the thing. Because I had fun with the story and feeling much like it felt like a movie. It felt like once I could suspend the disbelief of my officers don't talk like this, I don't talk like this, with that particular tune. Once I got past that, it really felt like one of those very cool, and it's long. It's a long mission. Probably longer for me because I was sitting and taking notes on everything, but there's a lot of maps. I was on map 9 before when the mission broke for me, and some of those maps there's a lot to do on and a lot to appreciate. So I would say a lot of little things, and I would give this thing absolute top marks. For a first mission, I give this absolute, thumbs up, maybe not absolute top marks, because from a storytelling sense, there are some choices that I would probably have made a little bit differently, but that's me. That's a personal opinion. This is certainly a good mission to play, especially if you can, get to the finish of it. And right now, it doesn't have a lot of plays. Right now, when I played it, I think I was number 2 or 3 to play it. So, hey folks, go play it, give it a rating, and get it qualifying for rewards so that people can play it, because it's certainly a fun story and worth playing. That's what I would have to say about it.
Well, I'm going to go next because I have a similar thing to talk about with the mission that I played, which was the Interwarp Experiment by AstroRobLA. This is a mission I picked up because I looked at it on the forums, and he has made a really cool poster for it with images and a nice title and a tagline. It's pretty cool. And actually taught me something. I did not know we could post images directly to the mission forum, but apparently you can. So it's like the art forum. You can post pictures. That's great. I'm going to start making posters. The plot of this mission is essentially you are picked to go and help with a experiment, a highly classified, highly secret experiment that is going to revolutionize space travel. And you have been requested by the lead scientist on this, and the author gives you a personal relationship with this person and a history, and he allows you to choose from 2 possible histories, which I really liked. He allows you to choose that you've either had a rivalry with this person going all the way back to your time at the academy. You were friends, you were lab partners, but you got into this, huge game of one-upsmanship on pranks that almost got you thrown out of the academy several times. And that was the one that I chose. The other option was a romance, that you had been romantically involved with this person, but they broke it off a long time ago. You haven't seen them in a long, long time. Actually, both options, you haven't seen this person in a long time, but they requested you because they know they can trust you. And as you go through this, more of this relationship is revealed. And actually you come to a character resolution as well. It's character development. You've been holding a grudge against this person for all these years, and you come to a resolution of that if you want to. He allows you to either, reach a mutual respect point or not. You can be completely belligerent and just not have this catharsis at all. And I really liked it. Now I know there's a lot of people who probably wouldn't, because you're ascribing thoughts and feelings to the player character. Some people really, really hate that. Some people, their character is their character. They have very specific ideas of what they would say, how they would say it, how they would react, their whole history. And I completely respect that, but I am not that way. I have some, just kind of idle notions about who my characters are. I'm not married to that. And I'm, while I'm playing your Foundry mission, I'm prepared to sort of accept what you want me to accept, as long as it's done well. And I think in this case it is. As for the rest of the mission, the story was really good. It is a part 1, so it ends on a good resolution, but it leaves a lot of things open-ended. It's like, it's like the first Star Wars, where it ends on a really good point, but Darth Vader's still flying off there. He's still alive. The villain isn't dead. It leaves it open. and I really, really looking forward to part 2. I want to play part 2 of this because he leaves you with sufficient suspicion about the characters that you want closure. You want to figure out who these people are, what they want, and I'm not going to ruin any more of the plot for that. For maps, he really utilizes heavily the Defiant interior, which of course, as we all know, is one of the best interiors that we have available for Federation starships. The only downside to the Defiant is that it is very cramped, which is only a problem if you have combat in it, which he does. And, as much as we all like to make fun of Cryptic for their cavernous starship interiors, there was a reason they did that. It's because in the mechanics of the game, you need a fairly open space. The one thing it does do is make combat easier in some cases because the guys are all bunched up. And I don't know about you, but my science character that I was running this on, I have a lot of, I have a minigun, so it does AoE, and I have the one that sets them all on fire, which is AoE and everything like that. So
it's just hit.
It's like, I hit all this stuff and then they're all dead, which is fine. Combat balance is a really tough thing to do, and I tend not to mark people down for combat balance. He did some custom work, especially in engineering. He made some really cool additions to engineering, which of course, in keeping with this theme of, the scientist is modifying the warp drive of this particular Defiant class ship, very, very heavily. The writing was very good. There was a lot of it. And I don't say that as a negative because it was all pretty well done. He fleshed out all of his characters, especially because, they're going to come up in the future. These are going to be recurring characters. Well, I don't think I have too much more to say. I think it was a really good mission. I encourage everyone to play it. When I played it had about 75 plays, and it does qualify for rewards, I believe. So, if you're the type of person to care about that, it does. So, everyone give it a shot. All right, Pax, what have you played?
I've been playing a lot of different missions lately. And I've gone through most of the spotlight ones, at least on the Federation side. And one of them that I really liked a lot, even though it was kind of corny, but it's still rather unique as far as Foundry missions go, is one by Dixonium, a spotlight mission called the Infinitesimal Frontier. And it's actually based on a premise that we've seen before in canon in the DS9 episode One Little Ship. You may remember that one where the Dax and a couple other crew members are in a runabout that get shrunken down to the size of a pea, and it has to fly through the Defiant and help the crew fight off Jemadar. Well, in this one, they take that premise, in the Infinitesimal Frontier, they take that premise even farther. They actually shrink you down to microscopic size and stick you in this little nanoprobe that happens to be designed after your ship. And they inject you into the bloodstream of this admiral who's dying from a life-threatening and as it turns out, apparently a sentient infectious organism. And it's actually a very interesting storyline. And
definitely a call out one to another very famous, fiction story, that being, the Impossible Voyage, the
Fantastic Voyage?
Fantastic Voyage, that's it, yeah.
Well, I also had the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids trilogy in mind, too.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thought the maps were just incredible, too. He took what I think was one of the red supernova maps and put some more clouds in front of it, so it looked like you were flying through a giant blood vessel. And they had things like in the first map that you're shrunken down, your nanoprobe ship is fighting off these leukocytes and things, and they actually used, I think, Gekli as stand-ins for leukocytes. And then eventually you end up having to fight off these microscopic enemy ships that are part of this infection that's attacking the Admiral's body. And that was really well done too. And eventually you end up sending an away team into this Admiral's brain, and they use one of the this dark purple alien cave map to stand in for the neuron that you beam into. And and that's also where you end up fighting the microscopic enemy soldiers. I think they call themselves. I think they're in the story they're called microzoa, and they do look kind of corny. They look kind of like second-rate Jem'Hadar to me. They're kind of tall and reptilian with kind of spiky things on their faces. But still, I thought that was another very entertaining map. And
I'm not sure. I think he used actual Fakiri there.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
those
way,
remind me of those. It's been a couple months, or about a month or so since I played it. I think those are actual Fakiri.
Oh, really? Well, okay. Well, anyway, the only real drawback to that mission that I had, and this isn't really the fault of the author at all. It's just more something that points out kind of an inherent limitation of the Foundry as it relates to the game mechanics, is that here in this storyline, you're separated from your ship, and yet you can still do things like call down orbital strikes and send in and beam in security from your ship, even though your ship is still in space in normal space-time, and you're shrunken down deep inside this admiral's body. And this
nothing
isn't
the author
really
should do
author's
about
fault
it.
at all. It just points out a limitation of the game mechanics.
Yeah,
and
limitation that Cryptic would face
too. Excuse me?
It'd be a limitation that Cryptic would face as well.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about something. Why exactly did he not just go with shrinking the entire ship like they did in DS9?
Because in the first map, I'm guessing it's because in the first map, it's just you and your away team that beams in and gets shrunken down. I guess it didn't occur to him that, to add a line in the dialogue ordering your entire crew to beam down to this research facility and be shrunken down.
Well,
Just you and your away
Could have done
team.
it with a shuttle.
Hmm?
Could have done it with shrinking a shuttle, essentially, have it be a shuttle mission. But,
I mean, you do
it's
play a
old
version
mission.
of your ship.
Oh, do you?
Basically,
I haven't played this, so.
when you're going through the bloodstream, I mean, it's basically a space map. He uses Gekli as he reskinned something. I'm not sure what as Gekli. Did they fire anti-protons, Pax? Is that what they fire out? Yeah, I think it's anti-protons they throw at you, and if that's the case, then
Jem'Hadar.
Yeah, no, Jem'Hadar threw Polaron.
No, that's Polaron.
Fakiri.
Fakiri used anti-proton.
Yeah, and if he used Fakiri for the core of the race, he might have used them for space too. And then he reskinned them as Gekli to use Gekli as microbes in the body kind of thing. He made the map all really red and very cool, like you're going through the bloodstream.
Oh,
so you do have to play a version of your ship that I think he explains away as, some sort of a holographic representation of this small, thing that you're being put into, because you're essentially shrunk down and put in, it's the whole Fantastic Voyage idea. You and your away team are shrunk down and put into and injected into the Admiral, or transported, injected into the Admiral's bloodstream so that you can take care of things, and then this kind of a holographic projection of your ship over the thing that you're going through the bloodstream in. So, I mean, you do have a version of your ship in there.
I'm just pointing out that, Star Trek has a canon reference for shrinking an entire ship. It might have been easier. Assuming, going back to the point though that this is a spotlight mission, it's not like you can actually change it.
Change it now.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. By the way, just one more little correction here. You keep referring to and you're hardly alone in doing this. You keep referring to race as the Fakiri. Isn't it actually the Feklari? That I is actually an L.
It is an L.
It's spelled wrong.
It is an L? If it's an L, then I've been saying...
They're named after a canon character named Feklar.
Yeah, Feklari. That makes sense. Yeah.
But it's spelled incorrectly in the Foundry, and it's spelled incorrectly
in the game.
In a few other places in the game too, which kind of drives me nuts.
This is like when I was trying to get these guys to pronounce Aegis correctly.
Oh yeah,
Aegis.
It's not Aegis.
It's got an A on it.
But anyway, Infinitesimal Frontier is still it's one of my favorite episodes, spotlight or otherwise. It's one of I think I've only like 5 or 6 episodes that I've given 5 stars, and that's one of them.
Well, it just goes to show there's a time to make a corny mission.
Mm-hmm. And the one other thing, the author did kind of strongly imply that there was going to be sequels.
You know what? It had that same feeling. Do you guys remember the first season episode Conspiracy with those like weird parasite, I eat you from the inside aliens?
Who can forget it?
From Next Gen. Who can forget that wonderful episode? The end of this had that same kind of like ominous, we're out there and we're like microbe people, you'll never see us coming kind of. It was awesome. It had that ominous, you'll never know when we're here feeling. It was awesome.
Boil your water.
Watch what you're drinking.
Well, that's all I have on that episode, so take it away.
Does that move us to discussion topics then?
Yeah.
Did we lose Drogan?
I think we lost Drogan.
We lost Drogan. Normally he's the one that tells us what to do.
There hardly knew you.
Oh, there he is.
There's no indication to me when that happens, other than the fact that you guys stop responding to anything I say.
Yeah, well, we don't realize that you're gone at first either.
Well, as you guys said, moving on. And I want to mention real quick at this point that something I probably should have put at the front of the show, which is the Foundry Challenge number 7.
Number 7, yeah, we have news.
Number 7 is all the missions are published, voting has started, or playing time has started. Actually, there were more missions than I thought. There's 10 missions, which is great. All shuttle missions. So make sure you get your shuttles out.
Yeah.
Go play.
Kirk Fat was able to get us out in time?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, apparently so. It's in the list. I feel
there's an
privileged.
unfortunate bug with Kirk Fats, though.
Yeah.
Which causes the shuttle to disappear.
I'm wondering if he isn't overloading the map. He's just got so much stuff on that map that
so many asteroids.
The renderers.
But I'm actually doing something similar, even though it's not a shuttle mission. I'm doing something similar because most starships can fit through those donuts in my upcoming mission. But I haven't never noticed that happening though. But anyway, everybody go play those. I'm going to challenge myself to play all of them, and so we'll probably talk more about them as probably next week.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll play all of them.
To continue trying to get part 2 done.
You damn well.
I can't promise I'll try to get them all played by next week, but I'll get a few of them played.
I have not been able to play all the missions in any of these challenges yet, so now I want to do it this time.
Only the one that I entered have I been able to play them all. I played the lion's share of them before I vote. So.
All right. Well, discussion topics. Dragoon, why don't you go first?
Well, this is I'm kind of wanted to pick something because I did a lot of talking last week. So I wanted something that everyone could talk about. And this is actually a follow-up to last week's conversation of one of the features of the Neverwinter Foundry, which I didn't get around to talking about, was the way in which it presented Foundry missions. And I kind of wanted to open up discussion on how would you guys like to see Foundry missions presented in the game different than they are currently?
Oh, you mean in STO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, okay, that's a great discussion topic, actually.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's a brilliant discussion topic.
Well, there's an idea that I had a while back that I've said in several formats, that I think, when you come up to a planet in-game, when your starship flies up to a planet, there ought to be a little button, there's a little button that says, enter the system, or start the mission, or whatever it is. Below that, they ought to put a button that says Foundry. So it allows you to see any mission that starts at that planet.
I like that. I would go one step further with it because I think your indication here is, I guess part of it is make sure that we need to make sure that people understand how you get Foundry missions in Neverwinter. I assume I always do this and make assumptions that because all of the podcasts that I listen to and everybody knows these things and everyone's been talking about it, there's a possibility that people don't know how this is working in Neverwinter. And
this is true. You should probably explain it.
Yeah, in Neverwinter, the Foundry is so integrated into the game, you can end up playing Foundry missions, and unless you know that that you're picking up a Foundry, it can just feel like a part of the game, because you walk up to a job posting board in the town square and say, view job postings, and you look at that, and those job postings, that's the list of Foundry missions. Every zone, every area of the city that you walk into, that you wander into, usually there's a inside of the local tavern or near the gate, there's a well-informed harper or a well-informed barmaid, and you walk up to them and say, hey, what do you know, well-informed person? And that well-informed person turns around and says, here are all of the things that I know that are going on. And then you get a list of just missions. I think you're supposed to get a list of just missions that start in that zone, in that area. In some cases, you get missions that start elsewhere, and I don't know why that happens, but whatever it does. But I think so.
It might have something to do with the small number of missions so far.
Yeah, the small, like that. There's not a lot of them quite yet, but I think that is, that spirit could easily be brought to STO in more than, I mean, from a totally mechanical standpoint, the way that you just said it, Drogan, is, probably the way that it should work,
Well,
like
that would, the way I would think of it is it'd be a supplemental thing to the menu that we have now.
There'll always be that menu.
Yeah, you can get them from that menu, or you can get them on the fly.
That menu exists. Okay, that's important to say too. That menu where you can just like open up your big journal and go find all the Foundry missions, you can still do that in Neverwinter. You can still just hit their home page, which is like by default, it's this page that shows you everything. It's got like a way to connect to the queues. It tells you all of the stuff that the calendar page tells you in STO, like what events are coming up, what's happening next, what, dungeons are available to you at your level. There's links on that can take you to PvE and PvP queues and Foundry missions and everything. So that page is still there. You can still just open a page and say, what are all of the Foundry missions that are available? That still exists over there in Neverwinter. I think the easiest thing to do would be something along the lines of what you just said, Drogan, where maybe every place that you warp into that has, potential mission contacts or, an area that something begins, like when you warp into when you warp out of Earth's space dock and into the Sol sector, there should be a mercenary contractor ship out there and a Starfleet communications relay. And if you connect to the mercenary contractor, you can find all of the grind and combat missions that you want. They're all listed there, at least the ones in Sirius sector. And if you connect with the Starfleet communications relay, you get a list of missions from, story missions ostensibly given by the admiral or whoever the mission giver is. So you just put two pingable contacts at the basics, like start points of every sector, at least in sector space. Yeah. And then for ground maps, like big social maps that have doors, you put a contact in the transporter room of Earth's space dock. That would
list any mission that starts anywhere on Earth space dock.
Anywhere on Earth space dock. You don't need to put one at every door. You
just have one per social map.
Yeah, and it could simply be like on Earth space dock. It could be an admiral's aide or a military contractor or something like that.
Yeah, I like it.
That's what I would.
Mako guy. Mako lieutenant.
That's what I would do to bring that idea, and I would use, if I were them, in answer to that question, I would use this idea that you're bringing up. Like, how would we bring this kind of integrating it into the game more, further to make Foundry an easier thing to get into?
And something that's more out there in the game where you see it more. You
see it.
And, yeah.
That's how I would do it. And I would, at the same time as doing that, I would use it to clean up the UI and and the tagging system and everything else. Because maybe that Starfleet Admiral contractor has, combat and non-combat missions, and it's a simple, you click one of these two buttons. I don't know how hard that would all be for them to do.
It's a little checkbox on the main screen that you have to hit before you publish or something like that.
So let me throw an idea by you guys.
Okay.
And this kind of ties in a little bit with the tagging system. How many Foundry missions would you say involve, for instance, a distress call?
A fair number.
Right?
A fair
Yeah.
number. I don't.
Yeah.
A staple of Star Trek in general.
Yeah.
So what if
None of
you're
mine.
flying through sector space and a little button pops up on the side that says Red Alert Incoming Distress Call, and you click it, and it chooses from all of these different missions that have been tagged to start with a distress call. And
Ones that
if
start
you do
in
it,
the
you get a
area
little
where you
bonus
are.
reward or something like that.
That's an idea.
Okay, so I don't think it would work.
Okay,
And
why don't you?
The reason I don't think it would work is, as much as I love us all, I think it's the community that would make it not work. Because while there are people, and a lot of people that we know, that would really tag their missions absolutely appropriately, think of how impossible it was when you first started playing this game, before you knew anything about the Foundry and everything else, to find a fleet that you might want to hang out with if you look at the fleet search bar in the fleet search system. And the reason for that it was so hard to do, is because most fleets tag absolutely everything they can tag as the type of fleet that they are. And that's what would happen with a fair number of missions. They would get tagged with absolutely everything.
Well,
And
I think you would have to.
Yeah, I mean, unless their start is mutually
kinda,
exclusive.
You would have to kind of, make some of these mutually exclusive. Like I always thought, as we, have had these huge round and round discussions, / arguments, / protests about Foundry rewards and farming missions and exploit missions. A lot of us have said that, we think that there ought to be essentially some segregated lists of, these are straight combat only missions. These are story missions. And you need to have a checkbox or something that is mutually exclusive. It can only be one or the other. And maybe a little reporting thing where, this mission is mistagged that a player can select. And you have to make some of these mutually exclusive so that you don't get that kind of thing where people are checking everything.
Yeah.
One thing I've always wanted to
how it would work.
One thing I've always wanted to see them do is, I'd like to see them have some kind of support for chaining missions together. For example, my missions are fairly easy to find. You just search for Ghosts of War, because they're all called Ghosts of War Part 1, Ghosts of War Part 2, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. But then you have players like Captain Revo who have their mission chains. They all have different titles, so it's not quite so easy to find them.
Yeah, what does he call those chains?
Well, there is.
I think this mission is series. I think that series is called something like Infinite Realities. But but there's no way you could find it in the mission title.
You have to read the description to.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is just type in the name Captain Revo and then go to his mission list.
Neverwinter does have a system for this. They call it campaigns.
Yes.
Yep.
Where it does string your missions together. I'm not sure exactly how it works in practice.
It basically means that you have to play them in succession. So Part 2 will not show up for you until you have played Part 1.
And also in the mission journal, it lists them together. As it lists, it says, it'll give you the campaign and then all of the missions involved in that campaign.
I really
that you have unlocked.
I really think we need that because, I have a 5-part series, which is not up at the moment, but, it's the very first thing I ever made. And I had all kinds of people, lots and lots and lots of people who played Part 5, did not play the rest of it.
Huh.
Is that because Part 5 can be rated higher than Part 1's?
My Part 5 has almost 1,000 plays, and the rest are well under that.
Mm.
I should say more than that, almost 1,000 reviews, but not plays.
Right.
So yeah, I think that is one feature that absolutely, positively, no qualifications about it, needs to come to Star Trek Online.
Yeah. Not to mention subscribing to authors.
I mean,
from me, I think the answer to your question is I want to see Foundry the part of the biggest answer is just simply make it. So I personally hate opening up that like calendar page, my journal, where I can look at all of that stuff. I'd prefer not to do it if I can help it. So I'd love to have a contact on a starbase that I could talk to, and he would tell me every mission that begins on that starbase or at that sector or whatever.
Yeah, can you imagine what Earth Space Dock is like.
Yeah.
But some of them will be, how many people start their missions on Andoria?
Right.
Probably not a lot. So, you might get your mission a little more visible if people know that this is there. They know they can go there and find some missions. Yours will be among only a few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I would do. I would just make it more visible in the game.
More visible in game.
And I would make it more visible in game and use the making it more visible in game to incorporate a better tagging system for missions. That's my answer. That's what I would do.
Excellent. All right, Pax, you got a topic for us?
Yes, I do. And this relates more to the Legacy of Romulus expansion, and specifically, I'm kind of wondering aloud here what we can expect in the Foundry once we start getting Legacy of Romulus content in the Foundry, because until we at least know what we're going to be getting, actually translating our written missions into actual Foundry content is going to be kind of a dicey proposition. One thing in particular that I'm wondering about is what will Republic NPC mobs look like, either space or ground, and might we even get separate Federation and KDF allied Republic factions for the Foundry? And if we do get separate factions, would they include allied ships? Sort of like the True Way factions we have now, which are a mixture of Cardassian and Jem'Hadar ships. And if we get two Republic factions, would they be friendly to each other? Would they be neutral to each other? Or would they actually attack each other since their respective allies are enemies of each other? Or might their stances toward each other even change depending on whether or not there are allied mobs present? For example, if you have one mob each of the Federation, of Klingon, a Federation allied Romulan, and Klingon allied Romulan, how would the two Romulan mobs get along with each other? That's one unknown. That's one of the many unknowns that we have at this point. Another thing I'm wondering is, will the Republic ships have singularity powers just like the player ships are supposed to? Because that's something that mission authors might find very useful to know beforehand.
You need to take into account.
Well, I guess the answer to that question, the last question, will be if the NPC mobs in game are going to get them, then the Foundry mobs will get them because they're the same ones.
Yeah. So far,
if they update the Romulan NPC enemies in game with the singularity powers, then the ones that we place in the Foundry will probably have them. And I don't know if they have done that update.
I think it would just be easiest to create a Romulan Republic faction that is friendly to the player, and then use the existing Romulan faction for enemy or hostile to the player.
Okay. Yeah, because you can rename the ships. You've got ships out there that already have all of the powers, that have the right kind of weapon type. That using current Romulan ships as enemies for Republic and reskinning them as an enemy Republic ship if you need them to be. I think that.
So I think what we see in game right now for Romulan Republic ships are essentially just straight up Romulan ships. Yeah. As far as NPCs go, I mean, player ships you're going to see whatever. But as far as NPC ships go, you don't really see, except for I think maybe one time in one mission that I know of, a Romulan Republic NPC flying an ally's ship. So I think what they'll probably do is make, for the Romulan faction Foundry missions, they will make a friendly mob that is essentially a carbon copy of the Romulan enemy mobs that we have now. Mm-hmm. That's what I expect they'll do. Just turn it friendly. Like, like essentially the friendly KDF mobs are carbon copies of the enemy mobs that the Federation has.
That just brings us one good point is that as far as Dan has been describing it, when you choose a faction, you essentially adopt the stance of said faction. So, in theory, if you chose Klingon mobs would be friendly to you, and Federation mobs would be hostile to you, and vice versa. It would basically behave from an internal standpoint like
the reason you choose
KDF.
a faction. The reason you choose a faction is to keep the game red versus blue. Yeah, both Dan and in all their interviews, Dan and Al Rivera, Captain Gecko, they've both been really clear about that. That's why they're doing the faction choosing. So I think you're absolutely right.
But the question is, how's that going to work in the Foundry? If you once they implement this, if you make a Foundry mission for Romulans only, will you be able to access friendly Federation mobs and friendly Klingon mobs and friendly Romulan mobs, or will you?
Who knows?
I don't know. That's a very good question, and I don't know.
Obviously, this is something they still probably need to figure out.
Yeah, they may have not necessarily put any thought into this.
Then again, they may already have a solution. I mean, they clearly, whether you choose KDF or Fed, you play the same set of missions after that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'd do is I'd have all of it, essentially. I would have, you hit the thing to select the mission to be Romulan. That gives you access to friendly Federation, friendly Klingon, and friendly Romulan mobs. Plus, enemy Federation, enemy Romulan, and enemy Klingon mobs. Separated from each other. So you just have all of it.
Yeah.
Put down what you want.
Ideally, it would work like how a Fed or how a cryptic Romulan Republic mission works.
Yeah.
Right. Well, cool.
That's what I do ideally. I don't know. I'm just, however it works, I'm just, fingers crossed to getting all these awesome maps.
Now that I've been able to get past the mission I was stuck on them.
Yeah, there's even more great stuff past that.
There's more great stuff past that, but I maintain the single, it comes down to, for me, the quality of life improvements are the ones that I'm going to note it. I might not out and out go, whoa, but I'm going to notice them in the long run. And I said it when I first started looking at the stuff coming out on Tribble, and I said my favorite thing so far is the new UI. And I maintain that despite how awesome some of the new content is, because it really is astoundingly good. The fact, and this touches on something I heard Gecko say recently in an interview, which was moving forward, the story-based sort of content and the mission-based content that we see is going to start being of the level that we've been seeing. That's super exciting. That's really good news.
Oh yeah.
He basically alluded to, this is the way we do things now. That we're going to see this kind of quality. And I went, my little fan heart went, oh boy, yay! So,
I can tell you about a couple of things that we are getting right away. I mean, I've gone in and we are getting the updated Romulan ship models and textures. I mean, on the NPCs that spawn for us. Mm-hmm. Put down the Romulan enemy NPC mob and it will be the new ships. Now, I don't know if any of the new, the new Roarwards they just designed, I don't know if any of those will spawn. Worth testing. Someone go test that.
I don't know, it's been kind of hit and miss. Some ships, if you try to import them, will show up and some won't. I know,
but maybe not import them, but is the weak Romulan mob, will that pop out of Talis now? Is that possible?
That's the question I'm asking. You put down a cruiser mob, will it spawn I can't remember what they are, but the tier 2 ones that you get.
Can't remember either.
Some of them are near unpronounceable.
Delan. I think it might be the Delan.
Yeah, Delan. Sounds like something from Babylon 5, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So we are getting those, and then they just put one thing in the notes the other day that they have gone through the ship costume list and cleaned it up a bit, removed some of the redundant entries. So that's a nice little thing. Something we have complained about.
Did they actually add the Tholians to the drop-down list? Because I know they are available in the Foundry, but they're not actually listed in the drop-down list.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I haven't checked. I almost never used them, so I haven't checked.
I almost never used the Triple Foundry, so.
Yeah. There are actually a few other factions in there too, like the Nausicaans that they are listed. They are in the Foundry under their mobs are available in the Foundry. If you search under the any, you have to select the any for the whole master list of all the mobs but they should have they really should have their own listings like the other races and factions do.
I don't tend to use that drop-down menu. I more just search for the first couple of letters and go from there. Mm. But yeah, they should have their entry if they're in there by species. You ought to have all the species. I think they just added Cardassian to that drop-down list for space.
Yeah, and Dominion. They've actually broken out the Cardassian and Dominion.
Mm-hmm. That was a nice change.
Factions into their own separate mobs. They still have the True Way mob in there, which is the kind of the combined one.
Which is good if you want that.
Yeah.
So I guess here one answer to the question of what can we expect and how can we expect it is one thing that I've taken away from all of the many interviews that have been going out with Captain Gecko, Dan, Brandon, everyone is that the Foundry will be getting something. They're well aware they're aware that it would be a great thing, that there are a lot of great additions for the Foundry. And what I think is that most of them don't have time to be thinking about what goes into the Foundry. In fact, maybe there are no people right now being able to really think about it except for maybe other Foundry authors and people like us who know what we want.
No, I think Zero thinks about it.
And I think Zero may think about it, but I think she's got so much else on it.
Tumor Boy at least knows how to essentially build a mission or, build a map with an eye towards putting it in the Foundry.
Right.
Yeah, because here's
what I'm thinking is happening is there's a thread on the forums already. People saying, I want this, I want that, this would be great, this would be awesome. I personally am taking pictures of absolutely everything that I think would be really cool, like this texture, this lamp. Holy crap, these chairs and these table decorations are really cool. Can we get those? I'm taking pictures of individual assets as I go through and saying, this looks really cool, so that I can put together like a big post of, I went through and these are my top 50 things I think would be awesome, or my top 10 or whatever. I think that we should continue to make lists like that, and that everyone, because it stands to reason that Zero, and I don't know what other devs are active in helping us get things in the Foundry when everything else is launched and they're given a few days to do that, or what have you. Whoever it is that's listening, I think is probably listening, because with the Legacy of Romulus launch coming up, even though they may think about it, it is probably certainly not as prevalent in their mind as it is in ours, as it is in the authors community minds. And they're probably going to be looking at things like that thread on the forums that says, these are really cool, these are really cool assets, we want them. And they're going to make their decisions. We're not going to know what we're going to get until all of a sudden one day we see the update and go, holy wow, that's great. I wish I had this too, but I think some of those decisions are going to be informed by things that the author community who's getting a chance to play this material is saying, this would be great for us to have to play with.
Well, I mean, we have TOS assets because people asked for them.
Yeah. They pay attention. They pay attention to what we think would be what the author community.
Even sometimes when we don't feel like they are.
Yes.
They probably are. Even if we don't get it tomorrow.
I think they pay a lot more attention than people give them credit for. I could talk for an hour about that for a very long time, they were told that we don't get any attention for the KDF, and now that I've gotten to play the tutorial, at least most of it, I've gotten to the point where it breaks, like a lot of people that I've seen, but they're delivering. They've obviously been listening. That's all I can say is they've obviously been listening.
Well, good. We have a few minutes left. Hippie, did you have a topic for us?
I got a really short one, actually. It's just
Perfect.
something I want to bring, something I want to bring up again so that I make sure that, you know what, I hope someone out there hears it and thinks of it as, yeah, that's true. We've been told, they don't keep telling us, but we've been told that there's no intention to monetize the Foundry. And
I believe it.
And I believe it. I believe that there's no intention to monetize the Foundry. However, there is a bug.
Because they sure would have done it by now.
Right, they would have. However, there is a bug that has existed for a long time in STO's Foundry that when I was working on the 28-hour, make a mission overnight challenge that was done by Cerberus Films, when I was working on that, I ran into the bug that exists that has monetized the Foundry already as an author. If I go to the C-store and I buy a Cation or a Farassin or a joined Trill, then I have that race available to create in the NPC costume creator in the Foundry. Until I spent $625, whatever it cost to get the Farassin. I didn't care. I may never make one, but I'll use it in the Foundry for sure. But until I went and spent that Zen to do it, I was unable to make one in the Foundry. As soon as I spent the money, the Zen equals money, I was now able to create a Farassin. That bug has existed for a very long time, and that directly monetizes the Foundry.
Yeah, and we have been told explicitly that is a bug.
Yeah, and
they haven't claimed it as anything.
They've been told it's a bug. They know about it. They know about it.
They sure haven't gone out of their way to fix it.
Yeah,
my short make lists out to
my short topic is I just want to get this back out there. I want to get people talking about this again because they've told us no intention to monetize the Foundry, and they have a bug in the Foundry that is a long-lasting bug that directly monetizes the Foundry.
Yeah,
and they have done nothing to fix it.
Which is Liberated Borg.
Yep.
Which you can make.
That's another thing.
If you are a lifetime subscriber.
So these things are direct monetization of the Foundry, and I just want to put that back out there. I hope someone out there is listening. Like, this is a bug. This is a real serious bug.
Yeah, it comes up. It comes up every now and then, and actually, that is the only sort of monetization that me personally I would accept.
Yeah, I would accept it too.
Is a C-store unlock. If you buy I don't know, just off the top of my head, a bridge pack, or the Andorian ship. If you buy that comes with a Foundry unlock.
I'm okay with
every C-store item.
But they need to say it.
Yeah.
This is a long-lasting bug that, in my case, made them $6.25. I don't know exactly how much.
Because I think you're at a great example, because there are people who may not buy a particular thing for their player characters because, just would not use it or don't want it, but they would love to put it in their Foundry mission. Like for me, those, the EVA suits, like the ones where they made for like the first contact looking one, I would love to have that for Foundry missions.
So
I'd never buy it for my player characters.
I'll never spend $7 on it. I won't spend $7 out of my Foundry.
That's another thing I'd love to have.
Unless they say that buying it also allows me to put it in a Foundry mission, which I don't think currently it does. So
no, those three that we mentioned are the only ones that do this currently. But yeah. I think this would be a great way to sort of justify getting them to put in a little work to get these C-store items in the Foundry. If they I don't want them to monetize the Foundry directly. I really don't. But the fact that this bug exists means that the Foundry is already monetized, and unless they do something about the bug, their claim that they're not monetizing the Foundry means that
they are ignoring the fact that it's monetized, and they have to address that.
So it's either go
I don't
away
care.
and really do
I don't
this,
care. Monetize it. I'm sitting here saying, go ahead. You know what? I don't want you to do it directly, but include C-Store unlocks or stuff. Yeah, go right ahead. I'd be down with that.
Okay, I want to put something out here just to see if I can throw this into perspective. Which would you rather have them fix first? This C-Store unlock bug, or the disappearing NPC and bridge officer pathing bug in preview?
Previewing.
Previewing.
You can't have both.
I'm just pointing out that while they may indirectly be monetizing, even unintentionally, the Foundry, there are more pressing issues.
So here's the thing. I guess one of the point is I always come at something, whether I have, like, personally I have the money to afford to buy a Pharassin and add him to my Foundry and whatever, and because I needed it in a mission, I went ahead and did that, and all of that is fine, and that's not a big deal, but I tend to always try to think of what is, the words like, I try to think of the person who has absolutely no money to spend on the game, wants to create a great story that has Cations and Pharasins in it. And they've spent the time to grind out the dilithium to buy the Foundry slots, and now they find out that unless they spend the time to grind out the dilithium to trade it in for Zen, buy Cation and Pharassin race for themselves, they can't do it in the Foundry. That's who I'm thinking of.
Or they can just use the Cospin import, get around it anyways.
Yeah. There
is that, but I guess the other thing is that just like with this latest exploit where people were stealing dilithium and dilithium turns into Zen and Zen turns into real money, the second that the two words real money enter into anything that I'm talking about with the free-to-play game, it changes the way that I think about it, and it changes its importance in my mind. Because it contributes to the bottom line. That $6.25 means that the Foundry contributed to their bottom line, which it should, but they say that it doesn't, not in that
They
way.
said it was
And
a bug.
So it's important for me, yeah.
That this is not working as intended.
But how long has that bug existed?
How many is, there's lots of bugs that have gone on that long.
I know, it's STO, how many bugs have existed for 3 years. So, I can accept that bugs are going to exist forever.
So
I
think
guarantee
essentially
you
what
that
doesn't mean I'm not going to complain about them.
I think essentially
there are not that many people buying C-Store unlocks just to unlock it in the Foundry.
No, probably not.
I don't think there are.
But maybe,
in fact, I'm
maybe
pretty sure
if they put some thought into it and pushed it, maybe they would for other items.
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? That's the only reason I'm paying my lifetime subscription. I just want Liberated Borg in the Foundry. That's it. That's the only real reason.
Now I have Section 31 costume.
I am not convinced that you could ever scrounge up enough Foundry authors to ever make it worth monetizing the Foundry.
No, you couldn't. I don't think you could.
No, probably not.
But you should. But you know what? You could. What I think what Drogan is saying is that the C-Store items that already exist, you could sell a whole lot more of them if they came with an optional Foundry unlock.
Yeah, but then
and this
they
would
have
allow us
to
to
make
get
it work.
they would allow these to get these items in the Foundry, which we don't have currently, that we want, and a lot of us have bought already in game, and I would hope they would grandfather that in if you've already bought them.
Yeah, if it already exists.
I'm still just saying that I don't think it would ever be worth it enough for them to pursue that route versus just eventually fixing the bug.
So yeah, that's my really short topic, and I know we've got practically no time left. So the only other topic I would have is go to Tribble, make a brand new Klingon character, and play it until it breaks, and then complain about the fact that it broke and you want to do more because they hit it out of the park. I'm a Klingon. You guys know that I'm a KDF fan, and I really enjoy playing my KDF characters, and they hit it out of the park.
Yeah, and you don't give your story praise easy.
What I've played of the what I've played of the tutorial and knowing what I know of the missions that come after the tutorial from having played them a little bit before, they didn't hit it as far out of the park as they did with the Romulan episodes, but when I hear them say that going forward, these are the quality of episodes and such that we're going to see. When I heard in the interview that I heard Gecko talking about that, he was pretty clear on it's going to be really hard to go back and do that to the Federation stories. But that from here on forward, going forward, this is what we can expect to see when they put out new content. I couldn't be more happy for the future of this game. And
really,
go try it on Tribble and then convince yourself to play a KDF character on Holodeck and come make a fleet with me. I love the KDF.
And I think it's great because, the stronger the game is as a whole, the longer it's going to last. And that means more time for us to make Foundry missions.
I just want to say that having been around since open beta, it has been a pleasure to watch the dev team and the game grow. I mean, this game has literally gone through so many transformations. I mean, it's hard to believe it's the same game. Yeah, it took 3 years to get there, but I think
nothing happens overnight.
Credit where credit is due. The dev team is so much more better at what they do now than they were when they started.
They've really raised the bar. Well, that's a great place to stop for the night. So
all right. I would agree.
We'll say good night.
Thanks for having me.
Good night.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, it was great to have you.
Yep.
Good night, everybody. I'm waiting.
Yep.